Hello and welcome to another episode of the Killing the Boredom podcast, a podcast where I talk about things that over the past week I've read, listened to, watched or played, and I talk about them with you guys in hopes that you guys may check them out and enjoy them as much as I did. So without further ado, the first thing that I've been watching over the past week is Atlanta. So Atlanta is the show of modern day Renaissance man Donald Glover. It stars him, Zazie Beetz, Lakeith Stanfield, and Brian Tyree Smith, and it's the story of this rapper named Paperboy trying to come up in the Atlanta rap scene and the trials and tribulations of that. But the story isn't as important for this show as more the issues that are discussed within it. So while it is a narrative-driven show, the narrative works more as a vessel for which the show is able to explore themes of race and class. This show's great. I really enjoyed it. It is so funny. Donald Glover's been around for quite a while now, and he's obviously very talented, but nothing that he has done has really blown me away. Like, I've always known that he has been a genuinely talented guy. He was really good in Community, although I thought he was probably one of the weaker cast members. I know that's not very popular, but just for me, I thought he was one of the weakest of the original group. And his stand-up special was pretty good. He's been good in his roles in Star Wars and Spider-Man, although they were smaller roles. And his music's pretty good. As I said, there's nothing that's really blown me away. But I do like some of his songs. I do like some of his work. But he has yet to really impress me. But he has really done that in this show. This show is great. The writing is spot on. What is so good about this show is that although the story is very grounded, it's about these guys are trying to come up in the rap game. It's a very grounded story. There's a lot of surreal elements put into it, and they just give the show a very strange aesthetic and a very strange emotional atmosphere, because you don't know where these elements are going to play into it. And sometimes the elements will be something small, like something that just appears for not a split second, but appears for like a minute or two, or it might be a whole episode. So for example, the very first episode is it's pretty, like, there's nothing very strange about it. It's just, it kind of introduces the characters and introduces their dynamic, and we get to learn a bit about all these guys and what their motivations are and who they are as people. But then there's later episodes. So there's an episode in season 2. I'm not going to review season 2 in this podcast. I'll do it next week when I finish it. But there's an episode in season 2 called Teddy Perkins, and I won't ruin it or spoil it, but I'm sure most of you are probably familiar with it because it became quite viral when it first happened. But that episode, from about 5 minutes in, is incredibly surreal and off-putting, and it's very strange. And I really enjoy that because you don't know what you're going to get from each episode, whether you're going to get a grounded story or whether you're going to get something that's weird and wacky. Like, for example, probably the best episode of the series so far for me was an episode called the BAN, Black American Network, and it's very similar to the interdimensional cable episodes of Rick and Morty. So it is basically just 20 minutes of this one TV channel, and in between the main segments that are part of the story, you're just seeing the ads, and the ads are very, very strange. It's very good. The episode is so well written, and everything in that episode it's just so well written. The way that it tackles stuff like race, the transphobia, not even transphobia, but it has a transgender sort of plot line running through it, which is very funny. And Donald Glover has such a great eye for comedic irony. Yeah, I won't spoil the episode. It's really good. You should check it out. Obviously, watch the whole show. I feel like the show did take a few episodes to really get into the groove of things, and it took a few episodes to really identify the tone of the show, I guess. Like, it's a bit, as I said, it's a bit strange, it's a bit out there. Yeah, I think check it out. It's a really good show. I'm looking forward to finishing off season 2. As I said, I won't talk about season 2 yet, but yeah, season 1's great. I think I do prefer it to season 2 so far. Yeah, like, check it out. All the cast is great, especially Brian Tyree Smith. He really impressed me. He plays Paperboy, the rapper of the show. I haven't seen him in anything else. Like, I'm familiar with Donald Glover and Zazie Beetz and Lakeith Stanfield. I love Lakeith Stanfield, by the way. He's just great. I can't wait to see where he is in a few years. Just every single role I've seen him in, he's just hit it out of the park. He's fucking fantastic. And he's great in this show. His character is very funny. He's sort of like this philosophical... Like, he's such a good contrast to Brian Tyree Smith, because Brian Tyree Smith he's such a good good like foil, I guess, to Lakeith Stanfield, who is this weird, like, there's something just a bit odd about him in a really endearing sort of way, but he always goes in these like philosophical sort of ramblings, or his character is like an example of one of the more surreal elements of the show. And it's such a good contrast to Donald Glover and Zazie Beetz, who are more entrenched within the real issues of the show. Like, they're trying to deal with poverty and trying to just like get money or make themselves big or make something of their lives. And while like Lakeith Stanfield character is also like that, but he's more just strange, and he's constantly doing these like sort of philosophical questions, and it's funny. I'm not really doing it justice, but yeah, check it out. But yeah, Brian Tyree Smith is really good in this. He's super, super funny. And I think I'm going to check out some of his other stuff. I've never heard of him, but he's super, super funny. Anyway, on to what's up next. So last week I talked about Clipping's debut album, Mid-City, and their subsequent self-titled. I said I really enjoyed them. I thought those albums really blew me away. So this week I'm going to talk about their EP Wriggle and their other album Splendor Misery, both which came out in 2016. So Wriggle was pretty good. I wouldn't say that it impressed me as much as their first two efforts. There are definitely a lot of good parts of Wriggle. The titular song is great. It has this really frantic beat. David, as always, is this super fast flow, super energetic. It's got this chopped up sample, which is just it's such a great song, such an energetic song. It's a song, it's about BDSM sex, but it's funny. It's not funny. It's a good song. It's very energetic. I liked it a lot. Some of the other songs on the EP didn't hold up as much, so I thought that their songs, Hot Fuck No Love. Sorry, let me just get the track list up. Yeah, so Hot Fuck No Love was okay, I guess. I didn't, it's not something that I'm going to save to my playlist. And Our Time, I didn't really enjoy either. But Wriggle was great. That's been on repeat for me for a little bit over the past few days since I started listening to it. It's just so energetic. It's definitely something you can put in your gym playlist. Wriggle, the whole EP in general, it's not as conceptual as Clipping, as their self-titled or even Mid-City. But it's just a good combination of like loud, enjoyable songs for the most part. As I said, Hot Fuck No Love and Our Time I didn't think were great. But Wriggle, as I said, very energetic, something you can put in your gym playlist, and just an enjoyable song. The hook is very catchy. Yeah, it's a good song. Back Up I thought was okay. There's not that much clipping in it though. Like their verse isn't, David's verse isn't until the end. But the beat is loud. It kind of reminds me a bit more of Mid-City, just this loud, noisy, aggressive beat. And then Shooter was, I think, the most popular song off the record. I didn't enjoy it that much. I thought it was okay. I think more so than, because what's great about clipping, as I've already said before, is it's such a good mix of the beats are incredible and David's storytelling is incredible, and that's what makes the songs just so unique and interesting. And while Shooter, I think David's storytelling is top tier. I thought the instrumental wasn't that interesting. With clipping, I'm not saying everything that I have to make has to be abrasive, but I like something from them that's a bit more loud and a bit more aggressive and a bit more in your face. And Shooter felt a bit more clean. It sounded a bit more like something that you would hear from a more mainstream artist. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that that's not really what I expect from clipping. And it's good. Like, artists should, like, I would encourage any artist to experiment with their sound and change their sound up. And I'm not saying that it's inherently bad, that this sounds not as abrasive and aggressive as their earlier stuff. I'm just saying, like, personally for me, I didn't think it was great. In saying that, I didn't think it was bad. David's storytelling was as good as always. Yeah, and still some of the sampling is very interesting. There's a sampling of like gun rounds and reloads and stuff like that, which kind of reminded me of MIA's Paper Planes. Obviously, in this, it's done a bit. There's a bit more samples. I think I read somewhere something like 30. They recorded like the shooting of like 30 guns or something like that. It's 30 different samples. I could be wrong, but Shooter's not bad. It's just not great either. Backup is pretty good, and Wriggle I thought was really good. I think that's one of their better songs. Not their best, but it's one of their better songs. I think it would be in their top maybe 15, maybe top 15 songs. And that's coming off. That's including the songs in Splendor and Misery, which I'm about to talk about now. So Splendor and Misery, going into this album, I wasn't as excited as I was going into Mid-City, and especially their self-titled, because, you know, before getting into this band, I lurked around the subreddits a little bit. And I heard that Splendor and Misery, a lot of people didn't enjoy it as much as their self-titled and their later albums, There Existed and Addiction to Blood and Visions of Bodies Being Burned. So I wasn't, you know, and especially after listening to Wriggle, which came out the same year, I was expecting this to be good, but I wasn't expecting it to blow me away. But this album is fucking unreal. Just fucking unreal. This may be one of my favorite albums of all time. I was seriously shocked by this album. So as a bit of background, this album, unlike their previous albums, while it's still a concept album like Mid-City and their self-titled, it's got a narrative to it, which those two albums didn't, or at least I didn't think they did. So the story is of this man who gets. By the way, I won't spoil anything, because this album is very cinematic, and it's got a very clear story. So, like I wouldn't ruin a movie, I'm not going to ruin what happens in this album. I'm just going to give a bit of a background and a bit of an outline, and then I'll go through some of the songs and some of the stuff that really impressed me without explaining the story. So the story, the beginning of the story, it starts with this guy who's been abducted from Earth by an alien spacecraft. But so it's about this man who's been. It's about these. It focuses on this man, but a whole bunch of people have been abducted from Earth by aliens. But the album is very, very clearly a metaphor for the Atlantic slave trade, and I thought that was. It reminded me of District 9, the way District 9 explored and was a metaphor for racism and apartheid in South Africa. This is a metaphor for the Atlantic slave trade. So I thought this was just so, first of all, conceptually, very interesting and a very unique idea. I know I just said it's similar to District 9, which it is, but to see something like this in music form, I've never seen something like this before. Another good thing about it was short. It's a 37-minute album, so it doesn't overstay its welcome. And I think it's always a good sign from an album, or like anything where you're watching it and you're like, you know what, if that was I could have more of that. But I'm glad that it ended at 37 minutes because I think there's nothing worse than something great just goes a bit too long, because then that can really drastically, in my opinion, affect the quality, and it changes the way you look back at the piece of work as a whole. But yeah, so this album is so fantastic. All the beats, as we know, as I've talked about, all of Clipping's beats, the production is very industrial. They use a lot of samples of, like they use a lot of sampling of like technology, or like sounds. Like they don't sample music as much as they sample like sounds. So it does that, but all the noise, all the production sounds very sci-fi. Like there's certain songs like Break the Glass where the background beat is of like an engine, of the engine of the ship that they're in, and it's so fucking cool. It is so fucking cool. And a way in which this album is linked to, like the concept of this album, the narrative of this album is linked to the Atlantic slave trade, is there's recordings of slave songs throughout the entire album. And I think that can throw a bit of people off because it doesn't sound like Clipping. Like, for example, Story 5 is entirely, there's no rapping in it. It's entirely, it sounds like a slave song. It's kind of like gospel-y in a way. And I think that can throw people off because they're like, well, this isn't Clipping, this isn't rap. But I loved it the way that these gospel kind of songs merged with this really like kind of sci-fi, this strange production. It was a nice contrast, and it worked really well. And on top of that, like David's storytelling, like this album would not be possible without the intricacies within David's storytelling ability. He's just so fucking good. Like, it is unbelievable how good he is. I think he's might be one of the best rappers out there. Like that might be. I'm not a rap aficionado. I don't know everything there is to know about rap, but he's just very fucking good. It's that simple. His storytelling for me is unmatched. And he's still got very good. He's very good at he flows great. I'm not gonna harp on about it. Sorry, apologies, but yeah, this album's great. And hearing this, I think it's so interesting that all the beats kind of sound like, stuff that's happening on the ship, like the sounds of sirens when he's entering hypersleep, for example. The sound of an engine. True Believer is this song where the hook is this slave song. I think it's actually an actual slave song, and then that's mixed with the sound of like a piston, but the piston kind of also sounds similar to like a stomp clap kind of sound, so like but it's the sound of a piston. So it relates to these slaves like making this song, singing this song about, with the sound of their stomp clap to use for rhythm, but it's modernized for this spaceship. Yeah, I mean, it's fantastic. This album's great. The beats are awesome. Wake Up has one of my favorite Clipping beats. Has this just really good, very quick. Yeah, Wake Up's great, and it's got this sound of siren. Baby Don't Sleep is awesome. I can't get over how good these guys are. Like, I just can't believe. I wish they were bigger. I mean, they are pretty big, but they're still quite underground. I wish these guys were. I wish they got more attention. I really do, because I'd love to talk to people about them, but no one I know has heard of them, which is unfortunate. Another thing about True Believer, which I said, like, there's songs about slavery, obviously. It's got that slave song. It's got the sound of the stomp clap. Another thing as well, part of the beat is the sound of, like, a receipt machine, which is so fucking cool, right? Because the song's about slavery, but it's, like, modernized as well, to signify the making of a sale. It's it's great. I love this album. I'm gonna fucking buy it on vinyl ASAP. Yeah, this might I'm very excited for their next two albums because a lot of people say those are two of their best, especially Visions of Bodies Being Burned, and I really am excited to see how they can top Splendor and Misery. I think a thing with Splendor and Misery as well is, though it's got 15 tracks, then not a lot of it is interludes and a lot of it is transitional sort of tracks. There's a few like choir cuts. So I think people may be disappointed that there's not as much content as is shown. And a lot of the tracks are quite short. Like Wake Up is like 2 minutes. And then Break the Glass is like 2 minutes. And then, they only have, looking at it here, they only have 2 tracks longer than 4 minutes. And everything else is on probably the shorter side of 3 minutes and below. And there's, let me count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tracks that are like instrumentals or interludes or just very short songs. So I think people could be disappointed. I think these songs as well they're not like bangers, like all like some of them are. Like Wake Up is a banger, Break the Glass is a banger, Baby Don't Sleep is a fucking banger. But I think people who really enjoyed their self-titled for the instrumentals may be a bit disappointed. Like, I don't think there's any instrumentals as good as like Taking Off. Like Taking Off has a fantastic production to it. Inside Out too. I don't think there's anything of that quality on Splendor and Misery. And that's not to say the songs on Splendor and Misery are bad. It's just to say that those songs off their self-titled were just incredible. But I think Splendor and Misery as a whole album, it just works better. And like the songs are still great. They're still very good. It's just not probably the best Clipping has made. But I mean, that's pretty fucking hard. Like they've made some pretty fucking good songs. So yeah, I mean, this is a great album. Check it out. Again, like their other albums, I think it's good to listen to it a few times before making a judgment on it. Pull up the lyric sheets and read along with it as you're listening to the album. I mean, I've listened to this album maybe 3 or 4 times now, and I still want to listen to it a few more times because there's a lot you miss. David, because he raps so fast and he doesn't really just say what's happening. He paints a picture. So it's kind of hard. You need to really envisage in your mind's eye what he's saying as he's saying it. And he, as I said, he raps. And if you listen to his stuff, he raps incredibly, incredibly fast. And there's a lot of metaphor in his writing as well. So it can take a few listens to truly get it. But I think it's worth it. I think this album is definitely worth multiple listens. And I hope you guys enjoy it as much as I do. I was originally planning on talking about both There Existed an Addiction to Blood and Visions of Bodies Being Burned next week, but I think that might be a bit much because I really want to absorb the album. After listening to Splendor and Misery, like had I only listened to it once, I probably wouldn't have that much I probably wouldn't have enjoyed it that much. But having listened to it multiple times, I enjoyed it a lot more. And I kind of want to give that same treatment to these next 2 albums. And I don't think I'm going to have time to do it for both of them. But we'll see. But otherwise, I'll probably talk about There Existed an Addiction to Blood next week. And I might talk about Face as well. But we will see. And the last thing on the list for today is No Longer Human. So not the original novel by Osamu Dazai. I apologize if I've butchered the pronunciation there. But the manga adaptation by horror manga artist Junji Ito. Man, this thing was fucking dark. This thing was fucking heavy. So it's about the original novel it was Dazai's last book he wrote before his suicide in 1948, and many people consider it basically his suicide note. And Junji Ito, as I said, he makes horror mangas. This is the first manga I've read, by the way. And so, whereas the original novel sort of is this deep dive into the psyche of its main character, who is haunted by anxiety and a feeling of not belonging, fear of other people, guilt and shame. And Junji Ito really brings that to life with his drawings of demons and monsters. So I haven't read the original novel, but I feel like what Ito brings with his art probably. I wish that I had read the original book first before diving into this, because I feel like, as I said, I haven't read this, but I'm just assuming that the original book was probably it was very sad. It was probably a bit more. Things were probably maybe a bit more implied, and it was a bit more softer. Whereas I feel like this manga is so in your face and scary and ugly. So I wish I'd read the original novel first to get a better take on this manga. In saying that, I thought the manga was really fucking good. It's so interesting to read essentially this horror that's about just the human psyche and the human subconscious and feelings, emotions, shame and guilt. It's very dark, and some of the drawings are just absolutely horrific. I don't want to spoil it, but as I said, I've never read a manga before, and I thoroughly enjoyed this. I wouldn't say it's an easy read. It's pretty fucking heavy. And yeah, it's just the story of a guy growing up, with clear mental illness, and how those mental illnesses affect him and affected his relationships, and how they altered his life's course. It's good, but I mean, as I said, it's heavy. It's not an easy read. The only thing is maybe, I don't know. Sorry, just thinking about it. It's fucking dark, man. But if you like that stuff, I would recommend it. It kind of reminded me of Hereditary in a way, if you've seen that movie, which is a great movie, by the way. You should watch it. But Hereditary, a lot of the movie it's a horror movie, but a lot of the movie sort of focuses on the grief and anxiety and depression, and it creates like the horror is very much focused on those feelings. It creates which I've found very interesting, because it's creating this horror out of these human emotions. What's scarier than having to deal with the loss of a loved one or dealing with a mental illness? Really, like, we can talk about how scary ghosts are and demons and all that, but I mean, I think probably a lot of people don't. I personally don't believe in that stuff. If you do, I mean, that's cool. I'm not gonna shit on you. Like, you know, everyone is entitled to their beliefs, but I think a lot of people probably don't believe in that, and even some people that do, there's nothing scarier than having to deal with death or a mental illness. Like, this is stuff that is very, very fucking real, and it, like, you know, it kills people. And I mean, everyone at some point is going to have to deal with in their life points where they're struggling, and it's very scary. And I thought Hereditary handled that very well. I thought this book handled that very well, creating a horror and creating these ghosts out of a person's psyche, a person's subconscious, a person's past. Yeah, I mean, I don't really have much else to add onto that, but I thought it was really, it's worth a read. It didn't blow me away. I would probably give this like maybe like a 7, but it's definitely like made me want to get into more manga and read more of especially Ito stuff. Yeah, I'd recommend it. And yeah, as I said, I might talk about some manga later on in this show, but I think what would be a manga I'd get into? Maybe like Death Note. Everyone talks about how good Death Note is. So yeah, I mean, read this. It definitely makes me want to read other stuff of Ito's, and it wants me to read the original book. So maybe in a future episode, I'll talk about the original book and talk about how it matches up to this adaptation. But yeah, so I've really got to say on it. And with that, that is the end of our episode. So next week, I'll talk about Atlanta Season 2. There existed an addiction to blood. And I don't know what else. Maybe I'll check out some movies. We'll see. But yeah, if you listen, thanks for listening. And like I said last week, I'm new to this, so I apologize for my verbal tics and my stuttering and my ums and ahs. I will get better at this, I promise. As I said, it's awkward to talk to no one. I'm still getting used to it. I do feel like this went more smoothly than last week, but I don't know. Maybe it didn't. But yeah, please give me feedback. And like and subscribe if you enjoy it. And yeah, I'm also always open to suggestions of what you'd like me to listen to and give my thoughts on. Yeah, thanks for listening. See you next week. Bye.